Welcome to UFC Fight Night 107 predictions. This is UFC Fight Night London, also known as UFC Fight Night Manuwa versus Anderson. It will take place the 18th of March 2017 in London. A lot of people have been complaining that this isn't a proper main event. And while Manuwa and Anderson may not be the biggest names, I think it's exciting matchup. There's a lot of good fights on the card. We're going to go from the bottom up. And I think the other thing as well is like the UFC goes to a lot of countries, and you can't take Anderson Silva or Conor McGregor everywhere. So they've come to the conclusion that the card in the UK is going to be mainly UK fighters. And to be quite honest, people will buy the tickets. So the funny thing is, a few weeks after it was announced, or a week after it was announced, the Bellator announced Paul Daley versus Rory McDonald, which is a much more exciting main event. But I think when you look down the Bellator card, it'll be a lot weaker than this UFC one. The card will open up with Ian Entwistle versus the pikey Brett Johns. It's a England versus Wales affair. This might not be of great excitement to people outside Britain or the UK, but I think it's going to be a big night for both of these guys. I feel like the unbeaten Pikey has a strong claim to win this one. However, I'm going to go with Entwistle by submission. Lena Landsberg versus Veronica Machado. It's the elbow princess against Machado, who lost her last fight via elbows. The Venezuelan Machado actually trains out of Poznan in Poland. A very credible team as well, actually. But I'm going to go with Landberg, who stepped up to fight Cyborg. I think Landsberg will get the win via TKO. Vicente Luque, the silent assassin, against Leon Edwards. Luque is riding a 4-fight win streak, the last 2 via KO, and Edwards has won his last 2. The last via rear naked choke. I would say Luque is the more likely to win by submission. Edwards has good hands though, and could catch him at any time. I'm going to stick with the Spaniard though. Luque by submission. Tom Breeze versus Aluwale Bambosa. If I'm advising Breeze, I'd tell him take this KO artist to the ground. Breeze has an improving stand-up game, but he has already got 4 wins via rear naked choke. If he doesn't take it down to the ground, this could be anyone's game standing up. But, I believe Breeze will be smart about this. He'll take it down and win by submission. Scott Askim versus Brad Scott. This is an all English affair. I think this will go the distance. Brad Scott has never won via decision, so that makes me favor Askim. Askim via decision. Mark Dicazy versus Timu Pakalen. Dicazy is actually one of my top prospects in the UFC at the moment. I think he will be in the title picture next year, maybe towards the end of next year. But Temu is no joke. He's good submissions. He's never been KO'd, but I see that changing, on UFC Fight Night London with Dicazy winning via TKO. Francisimar Barrosa versus Darren Stewart is a rematch, as the last time out their bout was stopped due to a clash of heads. I think Stewart has thunder in his hands, and if he can land early, then he can turn Barrosa's lights out. However, I think it's much more likely that Barrosa takes this to the ground and submits Stewart. So Barrosa via submission. Daniel Omielanchuk against Timothy Johnson. I know the heavyweight division needs guys, but these two are what I would consider good fighters for the regional scene, but they're not UFC level fighters. They're never going to be in the top 5. If they get in the top 10, it's showing you how weak the division is. I think this could go the distance, and If it does, the second half of the fight is going to be terrible to watch. I think both guys will be gassed out. It really then becomes a toss-up, but I'm going to go with the pole on Omielanczuk. This next fight, I love it. Makwan Amirkhani against Arnold Allen. I think this is one of the best fights on the card. I think this is actually one of the best fights the UFC has made this year. Both of these guys are really good prospects, in my opinion. I love this fight. Mr. Finland is now fighting out of Straight Blast Gym, SBG Island. Arnold Allen has a huge upside, and I'm actually going to pick this one for fight of the night. I'm going to pick Amirkhani by decision. Joe Duffy versus Reza Madadi. I feel Joe Duffy was actually brought into the UFC to kind of be the Conor McGregor killer. It's not really worked out that way. It's not worked out that way at all, actually. And there's a strong suggestion that after this fight, he's heading to Bellator. Mad Dog isn't an easy opponent, and I suspect that he will try and wrestle Duffy. If Duffy can keep it standing, I think he can win on points. So I'm going to go with Duffy bowing out with a win on points. Brad Pickett, absolute legend, especially on the English scene, is having his retirement fight against Enrique Barones. Brad Pickett's nickname is One Punch. He hasn't won 3 in a row since 2010. His winning streak back in 2010 actually culminated with a win over Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson. He's only won 3 of his last 10. And he hasn't actually won by KO since 2012. So the likelihood that he goes out with a KO victory is very slim. Barones, however, has lost his last 2. The last time out was his first KO loss. So if I'm dreaming a little bit, I'm hoping that the nut has been cracked, and all it's going to take is Brad Pickett to touch him and Barones fall down. I think it could be a war on the feet. I hope it will be, and I hope it gets the crowd involved and everybody's pleased. I'm not going to pick against Brad Pickett in this final match, but I wouldn't put any money on him winning this either. A late addition to this card is Alan Jouban versus Gunnar Nelson. And I think this is a good fight as well. I think this is a really exciting fight. I've seen a few people lazily calling this a striker versus a grappler, and that's immensely disrespectful to the rounded game of both guys. I think obviously Jouban is a better striker, especially at range, and Gunnar Nelson is one of the best submission artists or one of the best grapplers in the sport. I do think Alan Jouban is a little underrated on the ground. We don't really get to see it that much, but from the things I've heard about him, he's quite comfortable there. Now, is he on Gunnar Nelson's level? Not at all. Is Gunnar Nelson on Alan Jouban's level standing up? I would say it's closer standing. I think the battle on the feet is much closer. That said, I feel Jouban's got pretty good takedown defense. And I think he's got enough on the ground to defend submissions. So I think that this could be contested largely on the feet, especially if it goes all 3 rounds. And I think that Jouban might win this on points. Again, it could go either way. It's a great fight. Both of these guys are, top fighters, really well-rounded in my opinion. But yeah, I think Jouban could win this one on points. And that takes us to the main event. Jimmy Manuwa versus Corey Anderson. If Anderson wants to win this, I think he needs to take Manuwa down. In a standing battle, Poster Boy wins, in my opinion. On the ground, I think Anderson could get enough control or ground and pound to win it. I would love a Manuwa head kick KO to, close out the London card. But like I said, I think Corey Anderson at some point gets this to the ground and wins. I think he wins this. Are we good? Yeah, ground and pound, so a TKO it will be, yeah. Okay, so that will be Fight Night London in the books.